Hello and welcome to Spardha Lines, your one-stop destination for the civil services preparation, UPSC, KPSC and other relevant examinations. Today we will understand some of the important articles from the Hindu newspaper. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is speaking about energy efficiency. What is the context and the gist of this article? We have one of the reforms that has been initiated by the government of India when it comes to the LED. What did the government do? The government came up with a program called as the Ujala scheme, through which it started distributing quality LED bulbs. Why? In order to promote energy efficiency. Similarly, the author in this particular case goes on to say that while we were able to distribute LEDs of quality in order to ensure that there is energy efficiency, why not do the same even with respect to the fans as well? When it comes to the fans of late, what we are witnessing is increasing use of the fans. In order to promote energy efficiency in the fans, what success we have achieved in Ujala scheme by distribution of the free LEDs and quality LEDs, similar such proposal will also have to be made for the fan market so that we are able to enhance the energy efficiency in the fan market is what is this article in brief. Now let us understand this article in greater detail. When it comes to climate change, what is happening of late? India has taken couple of measures in order to ensure the climate change variants are reduced over a period of time. Temperature is kept in check, and one such measure is what is called as the nationally determined contributions. What are these nationally determined contributions? These are as prescribed under the Paris Agreement of 2015. In 2015, Paris Agreement came into picture. As per Paris Agreement, each country will have to define the nationally determined contributions, which means to say they are not binding as the previous conventions. When you go back to the year 1997, you have the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol made one important plan, and it said that whenever commitments are being given under the international conventions, it is binding on the countries. They have to ensure that they follow this prescribed path envisaged by the Kyoto Protocol. But when it comes to 2015 Paris Agreement, it was not binding in nature, but it was voluntary. When we say voluntary, countries will come up with its own schemes and programs to reduce the greenhouse gases, come up with its own program so that they can also enhance the renewable energy sector and also promote energy efficient apparatus. So one such program which the government of India has taken as part of the nationally determined contributions is to increase the energy efficiency. So basically we have couple of tools, we have couple of equipments which have been used in the electricity. So this electricity, where we are making use of the bulbs, we are making use of the air conditioners, we are making use of the fans, we are making use of the tube lights. So how are we going to promote advanced level of technology in all these domains so that there is energy efficiency which is being met as part of the nationally determined contributions? So the author in this particular case goes on to say that when it comes to the fans industry in India, it is increasing of late. Why? That is because what we are witnessing is the warmth nature. What we are also witnessing is increase in the temperature, and people are continuously making use of the fans. So in order to promote energy efficiency, what we have to come up and develop is these fans which is able to meet the standards as well as the quality. The author in this case takes into picture couple of examples. The author says that when it comes to light emitting diodes, we have had a success story with respect to the Ujala. Similar such things will have to be imported same way towards the fan industry. India's goal of reducing harmful emissions per unit of GDP by 45% by 2030 relative to 2005 requires a sharp reduction in the energy consumed for the economic activities. Households account for nearly a third of electricity consumed in India. So out of the entire energy that is consumed in India, about 1/3 is consumed by the households. So if the power generation, energy generation by thermal power plant, hydropower plant, nuclear energy, renewable energy is taken into picture, the entire 100%, 33% of it is used by the households. Similarly, it can be used by the industries. So about 1/3 of the energy that is that is produced is used by the household, used by 90% of the households as per the Council of Energy, Environment and Water Survey of 2020, which represent about a quarter of the household energy consumption. The Indian Cooling Action Plan projects that the number of fans in use in India could grow to a billion by the year 2038 from about 500 million now. So what is the project? In the near future, what we have to introduce is energy efficiency into the fan sector. So the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has introduced a program called as the Star Rating Program, which is mandatory for the ceiling fans from the year 2022. So they came up with a program that in case you are installing fans in your house, this will have a rating, 1 rating, 2 rating, 3 rating, so on and so forth. And if it is of optimum level, if it is meeting the intended standards, in that case it will be provided what is called as the 5-star rating. So one which is good, one which is efficient will be provided 5-star rating. But what is the issue with these 5-star rating fans? The issue with these 5-star rating fans is that whenever they have to come with quality, whenever they have to ensure that technology efficiency is introduced in these fans, it obviously will involve a lot of cost as well. If the price of that particular fan has to meet a particular technology and energy efficiency, lot of innovation goes into it, so people will start making this particular fan at a very exorbitant prices. So the 5-star fans cost twice as much as the typical unrated fans. So if there is a fan which does not have a rating, if there is a fan which has a 5-star rating, if there are people whom would be asked which would you take, obviously they look at the cost of that particular fan. So the cheaper it is and it is given to the people, they would only be able to afford the cheaper ones. So in order to overcome this dilemma, whether should we go for 5-star rating, but if we go for 5-star rating fans, the problem is with the cost. So how are we going to overcome this particular issue? This is where what we have to look at is Energy Efficient Services Limited is planning a demand aggregation program to sell about 10 million 5-star ceiling fans. So what happened under the Ujala program, which we had a success where LEDs were manufactured, these LEDs manufactured were procured at a large numbers and ultimately they were delivered to the people in the country. Similarly, if fans can also produce in mass, so large number of industries step into it, they start producing 5-star rating fans, the government is able to provide a certain level of subsidy, and if it is given to the people would be able to procure this particular product, and thereby what we will have is increased efficiency. So under the Ujala program launched in 2015, it helped reduce the price of LED lamps from 400 to 90 in a span of 3 to 4 years. If we can do the same when it comes to the fans, then this will obviously increase the intake of the fans, and what we will have is the 5-star rating fans, which will ultimately increase the energy efficiency in India. So the author goes on to say the success of Ujala program will have to be implemented when it comes to the fan industry as well. However, the demand aggregation is most effective when a single technology specification is procured in bulk. In case of the LEDs, it was the 9-watt white light LED bulb. So what is the issue here? The author says if we have to implement this particular program, that is fans, we have to increase the energy efficiency. There are some loopholes that we have to address. When it comes to the when it comes to the bulb, you have one single technology that is used, but when it comes to the fans, there is not one single technology. So when it comes to the fans, what we require is the 5-star performance. So if we require the 5-star performance, what we have to do is we have to import a lot of equipments and tools and components from a foreign country. This will also increase the imports that we are making from the foreign country. So we have to go indigenous. So this technology has to be taught. So the first major point is that when it comes to the fans and when it comes to the bulb, it is totally a different sector. When it comes to the bulbs, we were able to do it, but when it comes to the fans, we may be able to do it only when these components that we are importing from foreign countries is replaced with indigenously developed product. So manufacturers offer different technology to consumers so that they can compete. So in this particular backdrop, what we have to do is create a competitive environment so that even if they are importing, there are alternatives that the people are given to. So whatever is best in the market, these people ultimately compete with each other. The ones who do not have the quality are immediately out of the system. The ones who have the quality are present within the system. What we bolster is the competition. This eliminates the unwarranted companies out of the system. So on one side, we have to develop indigenous communities, that is indigenous companies, and at the same time we have to let the companies compete with each other so that only those products which are of quality is into the market. Then we have to balance between price reduction and quality as well. This means that whatever product that is coming into the market, that has to be of quality. It shouldn't be a cheaper quality. When it is not of quality, people will start using it, and if it stops, then people will start questioning this entire device. When it comes to Ujala or the bulb technology, what happens? A bulb is comparatively cheaper. It is about 90 bucks. As we just saw in the statistics, it was reduced from 400 to 90, which means to say it is easy for them to replace a bulb. Even in Ujala, when it initially started off, there were some of the mediocre or low quality bulbs that were given to the people. Such things should not happen in the fan industry or the fan sector. Why? That is because replacing of a bulb is very easy, but replacing of a fan is not that easy because it also costs more as well. So when we are looking at price reduction, this should also be able to manage with the quality. If you are not able to give the quality, people will not buy that particular product. Instead, they may go back to the old product, and this entire premise or support for the 5-star rating fans will not be a successful one. Foster high quality domestic manufacturing capacity for high efficiency fans. We did discuss about it, that more and more Indian companies will have to be promoted, and we have to dedicate resources to strengthening the standard and the labeling program. So whenever a product comes into the market, this product will have to be evaluated, this product will have to be monitored, it has to be checked, and on the basis of that, a labeling and a monitoring mechanism will have to be established. It has to be given a grading. A certain benchmark will have to be set. If it is not meeting that benchmark established by the Bureau of Standards, in that case it has to be eliminated or revoked from the market. If we are able to do whatever success we saw with respect to Ujala, the same can be implemented for the fan industry, is what is this article all about. So basically, we are coming up with a new mechanism where 5-star rating fans will be introduced in the near future. This will be supported by the government. If it is to be made, if it has to be met with similar success as much as Ujala, quality has to be provided, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about two important parameters. One is with respect to the India's development. The author tries to compare that India has a very good technological policy where we were able to envisage that if India has to grow, what we require is the industries as well as the technology. So we were able to invest a lot of money initially after India became independent in terms of Indian Institutes of Technology, in terms of Indian Institute of Management. We also came up with ISRO as well. We also developed couple of technological related advanced manufacturing companies as well, which are all funded by the government. So the author is trying to question that whether this idea of developing this ISRO, so on and so forth, is it right? Why? Because there are a couple of poverty related issues that we have not addressed. While we are not able to address those related issues, should we go about investing a lot of money in the technological prospects like ISRO, where we do not derive any of the profits even initially, but over a period of time we may develop those kind of projects? But the author says this idea that technology and investment in the technological sector should not be done, and all the investment should be done only in the poverty stricken areas, is a fallacy, and this has to be eliminated, says the author. So the author says that yes, poverty related programs will have to take place, and at the same time whatever mechanisms have been done, taken, policy initiatives have been taken for the development of the technology, for development of science related projects, has to go hand in hand with both of these is the gist of this article. Let us try and understand what is the author trying to say. When it comes to the government of India, before the government set up the Indian Space Research Organization in the year 1969, it was coordinated by the Department of Atomic Energy, which itself had funded in the 1950s. So it is the ISRO which came up in the year 1969, but prior to that, we did have a couple of programs that were run by the Department of Atomic Energy, which was founded in the 1950s. So it is not that all of a sudden ISRO was established in 1969, but we had couple of ideas, programs and implementations which are already being undertaken by the Department of Atomic Energy. Between 1951 and 1961, India established 5 Indian Institutes of Technology. The first Indian Institute of Management was inaugurated in 1961, and we also have couple of public sector units as well. One with respect to the aeronautics in the form of HAL. We also had the Bharat Electronics Limited in the form of BEL. We also had BEML. We had couple of industries, one with respect to the pharmaceutical sector, the telephone sector. We had all major public sector units. Why did India take up and invest in all these public sector? That is because when you look at what happened after 1947, you had leaders who were thinking whether should we adapt to socialism principles or should we go by the capitalism principles. But India had a dilemma. If we are going by the picture of capitalism, which was present in the western side, for example United States of America or United Kingdom, what is the major issue? The major issue would be that India has a lot of poverty right now. We had what is called as the Hindu rate of growth, which means 1.2%, 2%, 2.5% growth of GDP. So at that particular moment, at 1947, we had the Britain which had sucked all the important richness of India. It is taking the richness from the Ganges and ultimately putting it in the Thames water of United Kingdom. So they had sucked all the money, all the richness that India had got. So India was a poor country at 1947. So even if you are requesting the private sector to come and invest into the markets, it may be a very tough task for the private sector because it is a long run project. You don't know whether there will be profits or not. So at that particular moment in 1947, it was necessity for the government to invest in all these sectors so that it is happening at the cost of the public money for the public. So initially the private sector may not have had the money, and at the same time, even if they had the money, if they had invested, all that the private sector is looking for is the profits. Initially they will not be able to generate the profits because the gravity and the magnitude of poverty in India immediately after 1947 is much larger as well. There would not have been demand. So for the consecutive number of years, companies would not be able to make the profits, but if it is the government, they will be able to withstand the pressures of the market. But India was determined to become a serious player in advanced technologies of the time, despite the multifold challenges. That is why India became a socialist country. It started investing in the technologies where private sector would not be able to invest. We have Vikram Sarabhaiji, the leader of India's space program, who envisioned, this was in the early 1960s, that satellites could be used for building a nationwide telephone system and for providing agriculture and health education. So when it comes to the space industries, we did not have the private sector initially. Why? Because this is one sector, you don't know when the profits would be generated, and as a result, government starts investing in the space sector. So at this particular moment, many people start questioning, why did the government start spending on the space sector while we had poverty struck? That is because we have to envisage, a leader is a person who envisages what would happen for the next 20 years, 50 years, so on and so forth. A person who does not have a larger picture will only look for vote bank politics. He will only look for 1 year, 2 years and win the elections, give freebies after freebies, not understanding the real macroeconomics. But a leader is a person who will understand the growth of the country for the next 20 or 50 years. Vikram Sarabhai ji was able to envision that, and he was able to declare the same thing to Jawaharlal Nehru and subsequent prime ministers, and they were able to construct a plan. And that plan is, now the poverty is present, but this poverty can be eliminated when technology takes the up level, when technology is able to bring massive changes, and that is how ISRO came into picture. So in 1969, ISRO came into picture because they envisaged that once ISRO comes into picture, in the near future, it would be able to provide all kinds of services where we don't have to rely on a foreign country. As of now, we are relying on foreign countries for the GPS, but when we have our Navik in picture, we don't have to rely on GPS. Imagine what happened in 1999. We were at the mid of the Kargil war. We wanted GPS, but they did not provide the GPS. United States of America did not provide the GPS. And as a result, it was Israel which stood by us. So in the near future, when eventualities come, no one will stand by us. We have to be self-independent. So it is this strategy and an idea which led to the development of these satellites. Yes, poverty might have been there, but we will also have to become independent, for which what we require is ISRO and similar such things. However, there are many such people who also say that this idea of investment is wrong. Why? Because one was heavy reliance on the public investment. We do not give space to the private sector. Two, the investments were also being misdirected as well. How misdirected? They should have invested in one particular sector. Instead, they have invested in couple of other sectors. India should have become labor intensive as well. Our main strength was the number of people, the population of the people, the demographic dividend. So we should have focused on sectors like garments. We should have focused on labor intensive sector, but instead we went and invested in ISRO. But this particular idea is wrong, says the author. Why? That is because it is only because the government thought about it, invested the money, that we are reaping the benefits of it now. ISRO is able to achieve and has reached and achieved this Chandrayaan 3 successfully, and we are the first country to reach the southern pole, all because of the seeds that they have shown back in the 1969. The program's eventual success, whatever we are witnessing right now, is because of the public funding. It is difficult for the private sector to move out without private profiteering, and as a result, government did introduce it. Technology capabilities built through the state support provided the base for flourishing of the private enterprises in many sectors right now, because a foundation was laid, a base was laid. That is why on this particular foundation, we have the private sector who are reaping the benefits right now, and professionals who were earlier trained in India's public universities have now become leaders world over. So the point is that what we have is the right decisions taken by the government. Added to it, when you look at what the government has been able to do in the past, the author goes on to say that the major picture as to why there is poverty in the country is not because we made investments in the technology, but there are some dearth areas, policy initiatives that were not taken by the government during the 50s and the 60s. The state or the government could not intervene effectively to reduce inequalities or ensure social development. How? Because when it comes to immediately after independence, we had large swathes of land which was consolidated only by a few community people and only from few specific castes within a community. This should have been redistributed, and if the land was distributed, this could have reduced the inequality. Whatever technological advances that we have made, investments we have made is right, but where did the government lack? The government lacked when it comes to investments in the social sector. The land distribution should have been taken over by the government, and this inequality that was persisting should have been reduced. How? By taking away this land and distributing it to the people. So independent India did not implement a successful program of land distribution, and as a result what we have is poverty, and not because we introduced technological mechanisms. Disadvantages due to lack of athletes translate into hurdles in terms of education, since people do not have the land, they do not have the commodities at hand, they do not have land which happens to be the basic asset, they will not be able to get other sources of income, that is, they will not be able to invest in the education sector. Historically, determined inequalities in the social spheres get replicated in the labor market, with better paying jobs going to the privileged groups. Persistence of inequality has negatively impacted industrial and economic growth in India. Let me explain these 2 pointers. First, When you don't have land, land is an important asset. If you don't have the land, it means that you economically are backward. Since you are economically backward, you would not be able to get education. Since you would not be able to get education, the well advanced jobs, better paying jobs will only go for the privileged caste as well as for the privileged groups. So no land, no education, no better paying jobs, and this also means that whenever a country has to grow, there is demand and supply. So demand will be provided by the people and supply will be given by the companies. So this demand is only coming from a narrow minority in terms of economic minority. So it is only a narrow economic minority who are able to take all the advantages and privileges of the market, but the larger majority are not able to reap the benefits of it, which is economic majority. Domestic demand has been lopsided, coming as it does largely from the upper income classes. So the problem is that since 1960s, had the government contributed rightly for the management of the assets immediately after independence, this would not have surfaced, says the author. So whatever technology investments that the government has made is right, but there is a lopsided demand and supply, all because there are inequalities which they fail to accomplish. That is, equality should have been promoted, inequality should have been reduced immediately after independence. Since they failed to reduce inequality, we have the poverty level right now, says the author. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, is the opposition's decision to boycott certain news anchors justified? All that I want you to do is go through this article, just read through this article, because you have a person who is politically tilted, who is also given her opinion. So let's not look into this article, but what I would suggest is look at it from a larger perspective. We have Article 19. What does Article 19 speak of? It also speaks about freedom of right and expression. So we have the right to freedom to express whatever we wish to, but there are some reasonable restrictions as well. Let me give you one of the preliminary factors. We have something called as the golden triangle of the Constitution. What is this golden triangle articles? We have three articles. One is Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. These three articles are called as the golden triangle of the Indian Constitution. Why? One is because right to equality has to be there. There has to be freedom of speech and expression and right to life with personal liberty. These three are very, very important for the sustenance and livability of a man. When it comes to this article, what is this article speaking about? We have few political parties who have come together. These political parties now go on to say that they would not send their representatives to the news channels, or they will not send their representatives to answer the question of about 14 news channels. So there are about 14 anchors from different news channels. In case there are political parties who want to go to that particular news channel, they will not send their representatives to those news anchors representing the news channels. So this article says, this opposition decision to boycott certain news anchors, is it justified? No. Why? That is because it is violating Article 19, it is violating freedom of speech and expression, and it is also violating the very thought that they are representing. These political parties who have come together, they say that they will boycott these journalists, but what are they supporting? They are supporting freedom of speech and expression. These journalists also have freedom of speech and expression. So those political parties should be able to convince those anchors as well as the people in general that whatever is being done is in the interest of freedom of speech and expression. So despite they antagonizing them, despite throwing antipathy against them, despite not having the likelihood that they would want to espouse the values of these political parties should still not boycott. So the boycott of these anchors and the channels may not be right is one such thing. There is another viewpoint to it. The other viewpoint is, what are the political parties? Political parties basically believe in marketing themselves. Where do they go to this? When do they go to a channel when they are able to promote the views and vision of that political party. But what happens with these news anchors? They ask a question, they are themselves the questioner, they also answer it, they do not let the panelists speak about what their perspective is. If they are the ones who ask the questions, they are the ones who answer as well. What is the necessity of these political parties representatives being on that very platform? So on the one side, they are not being given the right to speak. So when a political party and its representative go, they are marketing their ideology as well as their propaganda. In this particular backdrop, when the anchor does all the talking and doesn't even let the representative speak and also engages in hate mongering, does not believe in giving equal opportunity to the panelists, why go to that particular channel as well as the news anchor is another perspective. So what it requires is a balance between right approach. But of late, news channels have become very opinionated and they also give their own opinions. During this entire cycle, what you require is a balance between the journalistic values and the political freedom and the freedom of expression. It is that we have to understand with respect to this article. But if you want to go through this article, just skim through this article. You don't have to take your perspective for the civil services exam. If you are a person reading for any other things just for the sake of it, you can go ahead. But for the civil services examination, you don't have to take the ideologically tilted viewpoints of few journalists. Now let's look into the next article. This article is important from your preliminary examination point of view. There are two important points that you have to remember. One is about Adi Guru Shankaracharya. The second is with respect to the Mandata Hillock. Where is this Mandata Hillock? Mandata Hillock is in Omkareshwar in the Khandwa district, where in the state of Madhya Pradesh. So remember, we have Mandata Hillock which is in Omkareshwar, and this is in the state of Madhya Pradesh. What we have is Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister who has now unveiled a gigantic statue of Adi Guru Shankaracharya. This will be called as Ekat Mata Ki Murti, which is Statue of Oneness. It is 108 feet tall statue, portrays the 8th century Indian philosopher and theologian who consolidated the doctrine of Advaita Vedanta. So who came up with Advaita Vedanta? It was Shankaracharya ji. The unveiling is part of ambitious Ekatma Dam project of the state government, and it is also part of Mahakal Lok Corridor, which happens to be a major destination for spiritual religious tourism. Now when we speak about Adi Shankaracharya ji, he was born in Kaladi in Kerala. He states that both individual self-Atman and Brahman are the same, and knowing the differences causes liberation. The quintessence of Shankara's philosophy is Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara, meaning Brahman, the absolute alone, is real. This world is unreal, and the Jiva or the individual soul is not different from the Brahman. To crystallize it, it may sound little, I'm just speaking a philosophical concept. It says that Brahman is an entity which is assumed to be an entity which is God and godlike creature, and there is an individual. So according to Shankaracharya's philosophy, which is Advaita philosophy, there is no God per se. According to the philosophy, there is no God per se, and there is no individual as such. Individual and God is one according to Advaita. So there is no super entity that is present. That's what he says. Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha, which means the Brahman, the absolute alone, is real, which means you and God are equated to be the same. So every individual is equated to be the same, and he promotes this very principle of equality. So the works known to be written by Shankara himself are Brahma Sutra Bhasya, his commentaries on 10 principles of Upanishads, his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, as well as Upadeshahari. So these are some of the important pointers from the preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article. This article says panel suggests GPS trackers to reduce overcrowding in prisons. So there was a parliamentary panel which has recommended ankle trackers or bracelets on prison inmates to reduce overcrowding in prisons. there are number of people who are under trials. Who is an under trial? A person who is not convicted by the court of law. His trial is still going on, but then this person will not be released by the state, primarily because if this person is released, he may destroy the evidence, he may intimidate the victim, and at the same time he may also eliminate few people on the evidence as well. In order to prevent this person executing such a task, he is thrown behind bars, and such a person who is not convicted is called as an under trial. In order to prevent under trials and overcrowding in the prisons, what we have is a suggestion that has been made by the parliamentary committee, where they say that whenever this person is given a GPS tracker which they have to wear, if we are able to monitor and track this person where he is going, doing what, at what time, then in that case we can release this person on bail, primarily to ensure and prevent the overcrowding in the prisons. So the Parliamentary Committee on Home Affairs has given the report which said that technology can be explored to produce cost-effective bracelets or ankle trackers that can be worn by the prisoners who have procured bail and are out of prison on bail. It said mostly bail is denied on 3 counts. What are those? 1. The under trial prisoner may be influencing the victim, intimidating the witness, or will try to leave the country, but if you are able to monitor him constantly, this person can be given the bail and he can live in the society. And if he is so convicted after this entire proceedings, let's throw him behind bars, but till that let's give him some time and let him live in the society, is what is this article all about. If you're liking these initiatives, please do like, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also share it with your fellow aspirants as well. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.